So we have reviewed the Pro Controller 2 for the Nintendo Switch 2, and I must say that it can have the name Pro because this is indeed a very comfortable and very nice controller. However, when it comes to this particular controller, it does come with a hefty price tag like the previous model from the Switch number 1. Has some really cool things to it, new kind of features, but the question remains, can we still use the Pro 1 controller? I have two of them in pristine condition because I didn't really use them a lot. Not because I don't like them, but it's just I was not using it many times on my Switch 1. However, it's kind of cool. Let's say you can pick these things up used for not a lot of money, or maybe you have one laying around. But also, let's do a little bit of a comparison. What are the differences between the two controllers, and is it even useful to have the Pro 1 controller? The Pro 2 controller is absolutely improved. So to begin with, when you're going to be looking into the shoulder buttons, you do feel that when it comes to the controller 1, we have some differences. So like not the travel itself, but just the click, it feels, let's say, more pro on the Pro 2, because it feels more durable, or at least the feedback is quite nice. And if you're going to be looking into, let's say, what you can actually do with this, so also the shoulder button is different, but when it comes to the trigger, I don't really notice any difference over here. So I think the shoulder button is going to be the biggest difference between of them. Even more important is the D-pad, because I personally have a D-pad fetish when it comes to controllers. And when I do notice that the travel is similar to both of the controllers, the feedback, or at least the resistance of the D-pad of the Pro 2 is different. And in other words, I really love the Pro 2 controller for that. However, we're going to be doing a side-by-side comparison later on, and also doing a little bit of gaming. But first, let's do a little bit more of a comparison. And the resistance, or at least the travel, is different, but the, let's say, resistance of the joystick, it's, in my opinion, quite similar. But we're going to be looking into this joystick up close. There we're going to be finding an interesting, let's say, change. So when it comes to, let's say, the joystick itself, it's absolutely thicker when it comes to the Switch Pro Controller 1. But what is so important about it is very simple. This means that when it comes to the travel, it's going to be different. You can see because of the middle part is smaller. And that means that we're going to be having a completely different travel distance. I think that is an interesting thing when it comes to that. But yeah, actually going to be playing, it's not going to be like a massive difference, or at least that was my first experience. However, if you're going to be looking at both of the controllers, if you're going to be holding it, the mold itself seems to be feeling quite similar. The only biggest difference, of course, the back buttons of the Switch number 2 Pro controller. And I must say that I don't really miss them when holding the Pro 1. It also has a little bit more grip, and that is something I do miss with the Pro 2 controller. But when you're going to be looking at, let's say, the way how both of them play, I think they're just great, both of them. And the Pro 1 controller is very comfortable. So next up, let's do a little bit of a weight comparison. Over here, 240, let's say 8 it is for the Pro 1 and 236 for the Pro 2. So it's like a minor difference. You don't really actually feel that. There are already quite a lot of differences with the controller when it comes to not only the comfortability, but just the way how it actually will play, particularly with the D-pad. So, and of course the joystick will be different. But okay, so when it comes to, let's say, other things. So first of all, we're going to be looking at the colors. I love it that they went for like a 2-color, let's say, theme with this. It's so much better than having like a full, let's say, black controller. It feels kind of boring when it comes to that. But, you know, that's more like a personal thing. The C button is another thing that it's going to be missing on the old controller. But if you're not going to be using the feature, you're not going to be missing out on it. And of course, internally, they have been changing out some things. But I don't want to go in depth about the specs, you know, when it comes to battery life and everything. So comfortability and also some minor changes. So of course the LEDs at the top. So normally they were at the bottom with Pro 1, they moved it up to the top. I love that. You can easily see this way, just, hey, which controller you are. So everything, the buttons and the configuration of the reset and everything is the same. So you can see the LEDs over here, indication what kind of player you are. Normally they were like at the bottom part over here. You know, these minor changes. And this is something we were waiting for. Yeah, I think that's more like a personal thing. But let's connect it and let's see how it is. So we're going to be doing the same thing with the Pro 2 controller. What I did is actually having the docking. We're going to be plugging in the cable over here through the docking. That is more, I think, the most easy way to go to. And I feel the vibration and it is automatically connected. So yeah, that works absolutely great. And I must say that I'm really flabbergasted how good and how easy this actually works. And I'm very glad that we have like this backwards compatible with the controllers too. Because this can be absolutely a big save when you just want to search for a controller and you don't want to, let's say, mess around with, like, say, expensive Pro 2 controllers if you don't have the money or if you don't want to spend the money. This way we can actually play our new games. And let's remove the USB cable. The game is still loading at this point, but I think this is going to be such a fun way. Okay, so let's boot up the game and let's get into it. So the vibration of the Pro Controller is just great, so let's get into some free roaming of the Super Mario Kart World thingy. And I think that the controller, if you're going to be doing, let's say, in side-by-side comparison with the number 2, it will feel some differences, particularly when it comes to the joystick and the travel, but you can just play this game without any problem with the Pro 1 controller, and I had absolutely a blast. So, and if you're going to be looking into the second-hand market, maybe you can find one for maybe a couple of bucks, and you can have like a cool 4-way Mario Kart party for not a lot of money. And I think in this case, this can be such a cool way to play. But another thing I wanted to check out is if you're going to be using Switch 1 games on a Switch 2, but we're going to be having the backwards compatible situation, and we're going to be using a Pro Controller, but that seems to be working also fine. And maybe this sounds kind of silly to test it out, but you never know, you know, with the backwards compatible, if something goes on with the software, something isn't compatible, or there isn't a problem in general with it. But so far you can see over here, it's absolutely no problem. So a fun fact with the Pro 1 controller is that when I do play some Street Fighter, I have more struggles than with the Pro 2, with the simple reason I did notice that when it comes to the D-pad configuration, the same look, the same kind of travel, but the touch itself, and in particular when it comes to the input, the resistance is different of the Pro 1, and I personally prefer to actually play with the Pro 2 controller when it comes to a fighting game, because that D-pad feels a little bit better when it comes to the resistance of the membrane underneath. But when it comes to compatibility, it works absolutely great, and I think when it comes for like playing around with the Switch 1 and 2 controller, so for fighting games, the Switch 2 controller is absolutely the one I love to pick and just to play with. But if you really don't care about fighting games and etc., you can maybe buy a very nice looking Switch Pro 1 controller, and in this way we can just play almost for a very budget price. However, there was still one thing I quickly want to chit chat about, and that is to do of the other controllers you can find. The ones, let's say the fake aftermarket, or the ones in local shops. I'm not talking about the Switch Pro knockoffs from AliExpress, I'm talking about ones you can pick up for $15-20. For example, having over here, oh it's rumbling like crazy, is the one from the Kruidvat. Yeah, this is like actually something you can find on Amazon. They sell it with all kinds of different brand names, but in the end this is like a cheaper version. I picked it up brand new for $20, and also this seems to be working fine. But how it is when it comes to compatibility, but also overall comfortability, because this is of course nothing to compare with the original controllers. Thank you all for watching, join me on the channel, subscribe, hit the little bell, because we're going to be doing some more chit chat about this particular controller, and it would be great to see you in the next video.